because the Kansas Statehouse considers a medical cannabis program that would be the strictest in the United States of America. A bill creating what's among the most limited medical marijuana program in the country was introduced in the Kansas Statehouse after several years of failed attempts at creating a program. Kansas is one of the only 10 states that doesn't have either medical or adult use cannabis, and the Kansas House passed a medical marijuana bill back in 2021, but the Senate didn't take up the bill, and there hasn't been any movement on the issue since. Senate Bill 555, they should have done 420 if they were going to make it 3 digits, but introduced in the Senate on Monday, which would launch a pilot program for people with one of these 16 medical conditions. The types of marijuana available, though, will be more limited than in other states that have created medical cannabis programs. It won't allow people to consume cannabis through smoking, vaping, or flavored edibles, but will allow people to purchase cannabis flower, pills, tinctures, patches, and ointments. Pharmacies, not dispensaries, will be the way of the cannabis flower is distributed in the state. And in quotes, it is very important that physician-ordered medication goes through a pharmacist, said Jared Holleran, executive director of the Kansas Pharmacists Association, in a news release. Receiving medication through a pharmacist versus a dispensary, such as in other states, gives patients a needed level of confidence in the prescription with the expert answers to their questions. But these medical people don't know these answers to these questions, you guys. Jeez Louise. The Senate has been the main barrier to the passage of medical marijuana bill over the past couple of years, raising concerns that medical marijuana programs have to be limited enough that it wouldn't potentially lead to adult use legalization. But Senate President Ty Masterson, Republican of Andover, signaled he would be open to a limited pilot program in an interview in January with KSNT TV. In quotes, this bill was written to comprehensively address the concerns legislators had with the previous bills and to ensure that Kansas has the most conservative and controlled medical cannabis program in the nation, said Sam Jones, Chief Operating Officer of Kansas Natural Remedies, the state's largest indoor hemp producer. Well, Kansas. Sounds like little Toto is going to go start a little farm or something like that. But I don't understand how you guys are saying you aren't going to allow people to smoke cannabis, but it says you're going to allow for flower sales. So I'm dying to hear how this is going to work, but I can't wait. And this is Jason Beck for the High at 9 News. What do y'all have to say about this?
Those pharmacists have federal licenses.
Exactly. Okay? They're never going to be able to touch it.
No, I'm going to put some flour out along with my birth control pills and my Vicodin. No, it ain't going to happen. That's nonsense.
I agree.
And they didn't have suppositories. They didn't have suppositories on the list. I mean, they're letting us all down here. Come on.
I just don't understand what Attorney General is allowing for this language to float through the Capitol.
Well, if you know it's never going to work, we're on board if you don't want it to work. So there you go. It's a useless exercise as far as I'm concerned. It's lipstick on the pig, and no one's going to let this happen. But, I'll sign off on this even though the DEA's on the phone. You fucking do this, and you lost your license. Because I know Molly and I fought them over this. They went after her, took her federal prescribing license away for just daring to make a recommendation for weed.
Yep. I just don't get it how so few doctors are trained in this, and it's not part of education in pharmacist school. And so why do they think that these people are going to know better than bud tenders is just asinine to me.
Well, I mean, okay, hold on a second. As long as this industry pays bud tenders about what you would make serving burgers at In-N-Out, and as long as we're going to be dismissive of the Western model of medicine, let's not completely discount all the extra schooling that doctors and pharmacists go through. I don't want to for 1 second dismiss, denigrate,
I wasn't saying that to dismiss.
That those people aren't.
I'm criticizing the curriculum.
Cerebrally I'm criticizing the
curriculum. I'm criticizing the curriculum, Yarrow. It's the curriculum. They're not taught about it, so they don't know about it.
Right, but the reason why it's called a practice, just like Dale practices law, is that these practitioners are still tasked with continuing education and updating their learning and understanding. And I don't want to, for 1 second, paint with such a broad brush that we suggest that some of those people aren't going to take ownership for educating themselves beyond what they learned in college. And
Yarrow, that's what it comes down to. There's the same question that I asked Dr. T last week. I was like why, how are we at this point where so many doctors, because they do have continuing education that they have to take, but it's selective, is what Dr. T told us. He said it's selective, and they don't have to pick anything about cannabis if they're not interested in it. I think that's the problem there, and it should not be you choose all of these subjects, but you have to ignore something that is a major wave that is going on now internationally in global science. Like global science and global medicine. You have cannabis is on top of everybody's mind, but American doctors just choose to stick to what they know best for some reason.
Well, because they're pusillanimous. I don't want to call them pussies anymore, but they're pusillanimous. They don't want to fight. But I've sat down and talked to pharmacists and physicians who claim I don't know anything about this. And once you mention the first pass effect, the route of administration, what happens when it goes to the liver, it's like, oh, I get it. Okay, so they're not far away from understanding it. They just don't want to. But I've talked to a lot of bud tenders when you ask them, what's the first pass effect? And they stare at you like, well, I don't. What makes this an indica gummy? Well, okay. So, yeah, we've got to, if you want bud tenders to be able to educate, you've got to find people who have at least the foundation to understand how to answer questions for people who are lay people in the industry. That's what's coming in. Doctors aren't walking in asking you about weed. You've got people off the street coming in, and a bud tender will, blow smoke up their ass. But, if you eat this, it's going to keep you up all day. And when you ask them, how does it work that way? I don't know. So the educational part of this for bud tenders, I think, can be stepped up. But you got to pay them more money. You can't have someone that can make more money on Grubhub than working for you and expect to have them be educated.
Dale, I don't usually do shameless plugs, but my company does that shit. So happy bud tenders. We actually do that bud tender training. We're working with some of Jason's favorite people, the unions out on the East Coast, making sure that these folks do have that right information when it comes to the medical side, the chemical compounds and how they build up everything behind the plant. Because whether we like it or not, they are pharmacists and they're giving out medicine to the public. Right, like all these folks going into dispensaries, especially using it as medicine for whatever reason, they need the proper information. They can't be out there telling people to use this, use that, when they have no idea what kind of ailments that they have. It's not connected to anything in their brain. They're like, oh, you take this OG, that's going to help. This OG is excellent for knee pain. You can't be having that. And it's a major liability for a lot of these dispensaries, and it needs to be addressed before we have some tragedies going on.
I'm totally with you on that, Rico.